With the authority of the University Council, I shall now confer the degree of Doctor of the University. I call upon the Vice-Chancellor to make this presentation.
Acting Deputy Chancellor, the Council of the University has resolved to award the degree of Doctor of the University to General Eva Burrows, AC. Eva Burrows was born in Newcastle, New South Wales in 1929, the daughter of Salvation Army officer parents. She received her primary and secondary education in Queensland at Windsor State School and Brisbane State High School. At State High, she was a house captain and head prefect. She's a graduate of the Universities of Queensland, Sydney and London. It was while studying at the University of Queensland that she committed her life to service as a Salvation Army officer. She was impressed by William Booth's challenge to the attitudes of the organised churches, reinterpreting religion in practical terms of concern for the physical needs of the poorest people within English society. Now international in scope, the Salvation Army transcends sectarianism and ideology by doing practical good where the need is greatest and seeking support from believers and non-believers alike. Eva Burrows' life and career reflect her sustained commitment to the service of others. She attended the William Booth Memorial Training College in London and was commissioned as an officer in 1951. Following appointment as an officer teacher to the Howard Institute in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, she devoted the next 15 years of her life to the education and spiritual development of African students. Her leadership potential was recognised early, and she was appointed first as head of the Teachers' College, then Vice Principal of the Howard Institute, and later Principal of the Usher Institute in Zimbabwe. Continuing her role in education in 1970, she became the Vice Principal and later the Principal of the International College of the Salvation Army in London, where she gained a profound insight into the international impact of the Salvation Army. In 1975, she was appointed leader of the Women's Social Services in Great Britain and Ireland. The experience made a significant impact on her and increased her sensitivity to the desperate needs of the lost and lonely, the disadvantaged and oppressed in crowded cities. In 1977, Eva Burrows served as national leader in Sri Lanka, Scotland and Australia. In 1986, she was elected General and World Leader of the Salvation Army. As leader of the 5 million strong Salvation Army in 99 countries, General Burrows provided spiritual and administrative oversight and direction to the movement. She believes the movement is of greater importance now than ever before, as the battle continues against the social ills of unemployment, poverty and homelessness. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1980s, she led the Salvation Army into Russia and other Eastern European countries. Among other current activities, Eva Burrows is a founding governor of the Queensland-based Foundation for Development Cooperation. Since her retirement in 1993, she has become concerned with improving conditions for the elderly in Australia and is hoping, among other things, to convince the government of the need to appoint a minister for senior citizens. The achievements of this outstanding humanitarian were recognised by her appointment as Officer of the Order of Australia in 1986, and more recently by her appointment this year as Companion in the General Division of the Order of Australia. She was named Senior Australian of the Year in 1993 and holds honorary degrees from institutions in Korea, the United States of America and Australia. Eva Burrows' illustrious career with the Salvation Army spans over 40 years. Now retired, her concern for and contribution to the welfare of the people around the world, however, knows no retirement. Her continuing efforts can only be described as magnificent, both in range and depth. Few people have made such a contribution to the organisation they serve and to the people it in turn serves. She is indeed without peer among us. It is especially fitting that the Council of Griffith University should honour General Burrows in recognition of her distinguished services to the international community. Acting Deputy Chancellor, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Eva Burrows, Companion of the Order of Australia, for admission to the degree of Doctor of the University.
My greatest personal pleasure.
It's a great pleasure to receive it from you too.
Entirely my pleasure. There's a lot of fans in the audience from me, you know. I now call upon General Eva Burrows, AC, now Doctor of this University, to deliver the occasional address.
Acting Deputy Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, graduates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm greatly honoured to receive a doctorate of this esteemed university. I greet you all, but especially I'm going to speak to the graduates. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your academic achievement, which has brought you to this graduation day. But secondly, I congratulate you on choosing as a vocation professions which are people-centred and not self-centred. Professions where the interest is focused on human well-being. My own vocation has always been focused upon people, and it has been life-enhancing and deeply fulfilling. So I can only wish for each one of you a time ahead as enriching as mine has been as you go out into the community to work and teach and serve. If I gave this brief talk a title, it would be, Who Cares? Now that can be a very sincere question. Who cares? Or it can be a thoughtless ejaculation with a nonchalant shrug of the shoulders. Who cares? It's obvious that you do, but sadly there are a great number of people out there who couldn't care less. As world leader of the Salvation Army, I travelled to many parts of the world. Driving in Switzerland on one occasion, I noticed that the attractive wooden Swiss houses were not only adorned with colourful window boxes, but they also had mottos and text painted on the front wall. I was trying to read them as we flashed past in the car. And there was one that was very easy to translate, even with my poor German. It said, Mein Haus ist meine Welt. My home is my world. What a small world, I thought. How sad, how self-concerned. Do many people live like that? I wondered. Rather, I thought it should be the opposite. Die Welt ist mein Haus. The world is my home. I must be concerned for this world in which I live and for the people in it. Look at the world. Man's inhumanity to man, human pain and suffering, the brokenness of the world, broken countries, broken lives, the despairing, the disadvantaged. Doesn't it matter to you, I thought as I looked at that house? Don't you care? And what about the world close up to us? The lonely and the fearful, the people living in a world of their own defeated hopes, the long-term unemployed, the violent young, the ethnic minorities who haven't found a place, the sad sufferers of AIDS, the schizophrenic? Does it matter to us listening here today? Who cares? I'm glad you care. You know, the brilliant French existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "Hell is other people." Now, Sartre may have been a very clever man, but on that occasion I think he said something stupid. Other people may complicate our lives, give us untold anxiety, but life without other people would be unbearably desolate. You may have studied about that internationally famous anthropologist, Dr. Leakey, who has spent his whole life in Africa studying chimpanzees. He said once, "One chimpanzee is no chimpanzee." And I can paraphrase that and say, one human being is no human being. None of us can be truly human in isolation. We need each other. And the qualities that make us human emerge only in the ways that we relate to each other. So no, Dr. Sartre, hell is not other people. Hell is when you work for your own success without worrying about other people, using other people for your own advantage, seeing other people only in terms of what they can do for you, and thereby corroding your relationships and ending up in a lonely hell of your own making. Do you remember Barbra Streisand's lovely song, "People need people, people who care"? I'm glad you care. Of course, we all have to avoid that very superficial caring interest in people, which is a kind of vague love for humanity, which can exist alongside a dislike for men and women as individuals. You know, like one of the Peanuts cartoon, when Lucy said to Charlie Brown, "Oh, Charlie, you know, I love humanity. It's people I can't stand." Yes, people do matter. People do need people. And that's why Jesus Christ told the classical parable of compassion and care, which is perhaps the best known story in the whole world. The Good Samaritan, we call it. Now that story all came about actually because one day a lawyer bailed up Jesus Christ and asked him a question. Now, I mean, have you ever met a lawyer who wasn't always asking questions? And he said, "What do I do to gain eternal life?" And Jesus turned the question on him and said, "What have you learned in your studies?" And he replied that I should love God with all my heart and I should love my neighbor as myself. And Jesus said, "Well done, you knew the answer all the time." But the lawyer, typically, wasn't satisfied. So he asked Jesus the trick question, "And who is my neighbor?" Now, do you think he didn't know that his neighbor wasn't just the person who lived next door? Perhaps he wanted to set limits on the meaning of neighbor. How far can I go? Is my neighbor only a person of my own race, a person of my own profession, a person in my own social set? But Jesus didn't answer him directly. He just told the story of a Jewish traveler on a dangerous road from Jerusalem to Jericho. He was beaten up by a gang of thieves and robbed and left half dead. Some religious men passed by, unconcerned, on the other side of the road. But a Samaritan businessman, perhaps a commercial traveler, he stopped and he cared for the man, binding up his wounds, putting him on his donkey, and leaving him to be cared for at some kind of traveler's motel. And Jesus praised the Samaritan. And then he said to the outwitted lawyer, "Now you go and do the same." Now I think Jesus Christ praised the Samaritan because he got totally involved. He endangered his own life because who was to know whether the robbers weren't still lurking behind the rocks? He overcame racial prejudice because it was just like an Arab stopping to help a Jew today. He gave up his precious time and was prepared to be inconvenienced. And I think if he was a businessman, probably time was his most valuable resource. And then he saw the injured man safely accommodated, using his own money, generously, I may say, because he looked after his short-term and his long-term needs. So it's not surprising that Jesus concluded the story telling the self-important lawyer and the listening congregation, "Now, you go and do the same. Care for your neighbor. Any human being who is in need is your neighbor." And I think that's a great practical philosophy for the caring professions represented amongst the graduates here today. I heard someone say recently, when I was young, I used to admire clever people, but now I'm old, I admire caring people. Caring people make a difference. Perhaps that's why the world admires Mother Teresa so much. I mean, she wouldn't win a beauty contest, would she? But yet young girls all over the world go to Calcutta and ask if they can just help Mother Teresa in her work amongst the poor and outcast of that teeming city. I had the privilege and the pleasure of meeting Mother Teresa, spending about half an hour with her, talking about our work, Salvation Army, and her work. I had the temerity to ask her a question. And I said to her, "Mother Teresa, how do you cope with the fame and adulation?" And she replied, "General, it means nothing to me. But one thing I have done that I consider very important." She said, "I've helped people to talk to the poor and not just about the poor." Yes, people matter, whether they're poor and powerless, or disappointed and disillusioned, or whether they're just sick and tired. Who cares? I'm glad you care. Rabbi Kushner, great Jewish writer, in his book, which is entitled "When All I've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough," points out that in the same way that certain foods and certain activities are healthier for the human body than others, God has created the human soul in such a way that certain kinds of behavior are healthier for us than other kinds of behavior. For example, jealousy, mistrust, selfishness poison the soul, whereas generosity and love and cheerfulness restore it. In other words, he's saying we literally feel better after we've gone out of our way to help someone else who's in need. We feel good about it. And I'd agree. And I'd also agree that nature's greatest law for all living creatures is not the survival of the fittest, but the principle of cooperation. If people really cared for people in the spirit of neighborliness, everyone would prosper much more than they do today. Who cares? I'm glad you care. I speak to you now and remind you that people are the great human resource with which you will be dealing in your new profession. Learning what makes them tick, why people behave as they do, what barriers hold them back from becoming truly human, discovering why so many teenage Australians are committing suicide. You're going to help people to cope with the physical, emotional, and mental illness and stress features of their life and how you can help them to find hope, healing, wholeness. In fact, you couldn't have chosen a more challenging and inspiring profession. And whilst you'll need all the technical skills and the professional knowledge you've learned at this very fine university, you must have the plus factor of genuine caring concern for your clients, your patients, the young people you deal with in the community and leisure centres. People are to be cared about, not merely treated as objects for academic study. That can actually happen, even in the caring professions. I recall when I was the leader of the Salvation Army in Great Britain, that there was produced a definitive study of the health services of the United Kingdom. It was called the Salmon Report, named after the chairman of the Commission of Review. I was discussing the Salmon Report with some community workers, medical personnel, and when suddenly the matron of a big hospital said to us all, "You know, I was shocked. I was really shocked when I read the Salmon Report." She said, "You know, I was halfway through reading it before I even saw the word patient." Don't be content just with gaining an academic qualification or a congenial job as a psychologist or health worker or community worker. Really demonstrate to people that you value them. Become their advocate if necessary. Articulate for those who can't even speak up for themselves. Make a difference in the community where you will work. Some of you may say to me, "Does it really make a difference how I live? Does it really make a difference if I'm a caring, compassionate, understanding person?" Well, it may not make a difference to your bank balance or even increase your chance of fame and fortune. But yes, it will make a difference. It matters that you share your life with others, making them and their world different rather than hoarding life for yourself. You can make an enriching difference for their lives. And believe me, your own life will be immeasurably enriched as well. So once again, I congratulate you, each one, and I give you my very warm good wishes for your future ahead. Thank you.